I talked about, distress, how disturbing the symptoms have been for them. Number four, does it interfere with their functioning or not? And number five, how frequent and intense the issue is. In order to check the intensity, you can ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense, 1 being the least. How intense do you think these symptoms are? So I hope that helps you all understand how we can at least evaluate when a person comes to us in terms of personality. You ask them questions related to this, ask them incidents that have happened recently. Can you tell me an incident when you felt emotionally dysregulated? Can you tell me how intense was it? How frequently do you experience these symptoms? How distressing is it? Does it impact your functioning, like, in your work, in your relationships? Do these symptoms come in the way? Do you think you're a little different from others, or do others comment that you could be slightly different from, or your behavior, not you, your thoughts, behaviors, feelings could be different from what others would? So keep a little, this is a small little evaluation to keep in mind. Now quickly coming to borderline personality. Like I said, before we understand dialectical behavior therapy, we need to understand the kind of clientele you'll be working with when you're experiencing or when you're practicing DBT. I'll use a slight bit of a case example here so that you guys understand the case better. So one of my clients, let's name the client N, just for reference. I'll not be naming her, but confidentiality purposes. But let's say I'll refer to her as client N. You guys can also refer to her with the same. So a little bit of a background about this client to just give you a little image of what a person with BPD could look like. Um, she was born in a very vulnerable environment. Why vulnerable? Because it was not the most conventional. So I'll give you a slight history. So when she was born, she was an unplanned child. Her parents had her when they were very young. The mother was, and the parents were not ready for parenthood. Let me put it this way. And when she was born, around, like, I think a few days after her birth, the father left home after writing a letter that since he's not ready for these responsibilities, he'll not be able to be. And he just abandoned the mother and the client. The client was hardly, like, she's just taken birth around that. So the mother, of course, was a very young mother, didn't know how to do anything related to that. So she relocated to her her parents' house, which is my client's maternal grandparents. They lived there for a while. The mother got busy with her, she wanted to become financially independent for her child now. So she got a job as a teacher. She started doing that. Now this, she was very new at her work, so clearly the client was being taken care of by her grandparents. Now what happened is, she started to realize, and this is quite surprising, but again, that she started to realize that she did not feel very safe around her grandfather. And at the age of 6, she realized that she was being sexually molested by her grandfather. Um, I mean, she could experience inappropriate touches. She used to sleep between her grandmother and grandfather, so she used to often experience inappropriate touches. She could experience that she was not feeling safe, but she was too young to express that, or even articulate what is happening, or even understand it by herself. Like, you can imagine her being at the age of 6, and this went on for almost like 3 years. I think at the age of 9 is when she finally spoke up about it to her mother. And she was, again, 9 is also a very young age, but she did express it to her mother that when I sleep with my grandfather, I believe that he tries to, touch me inappropriately, and I am not okay with that. Of course, she expected empathy. She expected feeling heard and understood. Unfortunately, the mother instead, I think her reaction was a little unexpected there. The mother made it more about, oh my God, I'm such a bad mother. and I should have taken better care. I feel so guilty, but I don't know. I don't have a place to go. Like, I cannot afford a home, so we will have to stay here. So it was almost like the client had to give empathy and validate the mother's feelings and say it's okay to her while she needed that treatment. And since then, she's been very angry towards her mother. She's 30 today. My client is 30, 31 years old today. She's very angry at her mother for that kind of a response. Of course, today her mother and she share a very beautiful relationship, but that's because they've spoken about it to each other, and now her mother understands that maybe her reaction was not called for at that time. Um, she's extremely angry at the grandmother because the grandmother also questioned her more than her husband about what happened. So that again, sort of uh, didn't work with her. She's been extremely angry towards both her grandmother and her mother for questioning her despite her gathering the courage to share it with them. Now, she was grown up in that kind of an environment. She, of course, moved out of that home to pursue her studies after her 12th grade, but she's had to live in that home for the longest time. And you can imagine that she grew up in a very invalidating and an abusive environment. And hence, she experienced a few symptoms here. One was emotional instability, where she grew up with a lot of mood swings through the day. Sometimes she used to feel extremely angry, sometimes extremely anxious, sometimes extremely empowered. And these moods constantly alternated between, like, they used to shift from one mood to another. Clearly, and there's a reason behind it, because when she tried to express her emotion to her mother or her grandmother, that emotion was not validated, it was not understood. She was never really taught in her childhood what emotions look like. She was never encouraged to express her emotions. In fact, when she expressed it, she was discouraged from expressing it. So she never learned how to name her emotions, how to express her emotions, and she, in fact, felt discouraged from expressing her emotions. Secondly, she was invalidated about her emotions. So every time she experienced an emotion, she invalidated it. That, oh, I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm not supposed to be anxious. Oh, I'm overreacting. I'm over exaggerating. This is not, oh, even if I express it to someone, it will not mean anything to them. So I'd rather dismiss it and let it go. So you see, she was really fighting with her emotions throughout her childhood, self invalidation, self dismissal, and unable to express it, felt discouraged, which is why she was, her emotions used to fluctuate from one to another, because the moment she experienced one emotion, she used to dismiss, invalidate it, start experiencing another emotion, and then, the cycle continued. So you understand why the emotional instability, number one, came up. Secondly, fear of abandonment. Clearly, her father left her while she was born. The mother was hardly available emotionally because she was so busy earning the money that she did. She was so, I don't think she was emotionally there to hear her out or understand. So he developed that fear that everybody's going to leave one day. Unstable relationships, whether it was her friendships or, I'll tell you, even with the grandfather, it was very unstable. One day she used to be like, oh, I really respect my grandfather. He's given me a shelter, he's given me education. Because her mom could not afford a lot with the teacher's salary. So clearly, the grandfather was majorly a father figure for her, gave her home, gave her education. Everything that she thinks she was because of him. So it was a very love hate relationship. I love him and I respect him for everything he's given me, but I also hate him for what he has done to me. Until this date that I speak, she still experiences that instability. Even with her husband, now that she's married, she sees the pattern there also. One day she will devalue him and call him the worst person in the world, and the next day she'll idealize him as if he's the best. Just to give you a little thumbs up, that the husband is quite a supportive figure in her life, and she really does appreciate his presence. But it's just a pattern, right? She'll idealize, she'll devalue. It's just one of the patterns. She is impulsive. Um, unsafe, she does happen to consume excessive weed, there is self-harm behavior, but not with the intention of killing her or ending her life. But every time she feels a lot of distress, it's just become a very unhealthy coping mechanism along the way. It's just one of those coping mechanisms that makes her. So it's like people with BPD will induce these strong sensations in their body by harming themselves, so that helps them cope up with their emotional pain. So they're like, if we create physical pain, they will get distracted by the physical pain and will not focus much on their emotional pain. That's the, that's how they mentally think about self harm, that if I harm myself physically, it will distract me from my emotional pain, and the emotional pain is so strong that a lot of them have developed this as a very unhealthy coping mechanism. um, Chronic feelings of emptiness, and that's why these people are impulsive and very big risk takers, because every time they feel empty or they feel this inner void, they will do something which is very risky, creating that sense of thrill, like unsafe sexual practices, reckless driving. It's because whenever that sense of emptiness is so strong that to fill that void, they will seek thrill, and it's often followed by regret. I think most of the times my clients come to sessions because they regret about something impulsive or something risky they've done. Similar is the case with my client. My client harms herself with the, she keeps pricking her thumb all the time. So when you see her thumb, it's most of the time bleeding or swollen because of any self-harm episode she's had. Like I said, she consumes weed very excessively, again just to overcome that sense of boredom or void. She's extremely angry. Like I said, she's very angry towards her mother and her grandmother. We did this little empty chair technique in therapy where I said, imagine that your mom or your grandmother is sitting on that chair. Her grandmother is no more, by the way, so she could still talk to her mother face to face. She didn't have to imagine her. But with the grandmother, when we had that emotional, it was a very emotional, overwhelming session because she really screamed at the top of her voice. It was that intense because the anger was highly built up. Especially because and she was highly triggered by her character attack. I think what bothered her the most was that the grandmother attacked her character, which wasn't very tolerable for her. So that came up in that session. It was a very intense session. Um, like I said, because they're so disturbed and emotionally, they feel highly detached under stress. They just want to like dissociate from the reality for a while. It's again a coping mechanism to deal. So this is what I wanted to, like, in a short glimpse, wanted to tell you that keep this client in mind, because when I talk about borderline personality also, I will share with you what can be done with a client like this. But I want to tell you that she's never learned. She's really never learned how to deal with these issues. She doesn't know how to regulate her emotions for a very simple reason. Her family never taught her how to name these emotions. They never made her feel understood about her emotions. They invalidated her and they discouraged her from expressing her emotions. So for her, she doesn't understand the emotional